Let me ask you this. Have you ever been scrolling online and then you stumble on a completely random video of a guy cutting a can of Coke? And you want to see what he's gonna do with it, so you keep watching for a few more seconds, but at the back of your mind, you know the video isn't actually going anywhere, so you tell yourself, just a few more seconds. Then you keep watching and oh look, he's now applying a filling foam onto silicone, so you keep watching and keep watching, because at the start you wanted to know what bro was gonna do with the can of Coke, but the video dragged you just long enough until your brain turned off, and now you're just staring at the screen mindlessly and whoa, wait, hold a sec. Did Blood whip out an adjustable chair? So you ask yourself, how the heck did we go from a Coke can to this, and what's the point of what I just watched? But it's too late. The video is already over and look, the seat is shaped like an ass. However, don't be fooled here, there is a double meaning in this one since the seat's shape is symbolic, it's supposed to send a message. The guy who made the video is making fun of you by calling you an ass for watching pointless crap all the way till the end. And deep down you know he's right too, since you're sitting there like a doofus thinking, well, shit, I just wasted 86 seconds of my life, didn't I? That's how they get you. This, my friend, is online brainrot, a phenomenon I will be expanding on later in this video, as it is a major theme in Star Rail's latest Trailblaze Continuance, Banana Outrage, Battles Without Ninja and Humanity. When I first read the name of this mission, I became really excited because I had a feeling that I knew exactly where Hoyoverse were going with it, and I was not disappointed one bit. You see, despite this Continuance mission's outrageously ridiculous setup and disposition, it's genuinely one of the coolest stories in Honkai Star Rail so far. Or, in the words of the great Mr. Reca, it's an absolutely fabulous performance. Once you peel through the layer of goofiness in this mission, there is so much substance on the inside, since the writers managed to give us a story interwoven with insanely good double meanings, encapsulating the nature of the self and the human identity, along with a critique of modern media brainrot trends. But that's not all. In addition to the aforementioned, this mission has also provided us with lots of good lore and information regarding the Galaxy Rangers, the Genius Society, the Memokeepers, and even my favorite character in Star Rail, April 8 herself. Let's get into it. Right off the bat, we're given a pretty clear indication of where the story of this Trailblaze Continuance is going through the title of its first chapter, An Andalusian Monkey, which is a clear reference to the French surrealist film An Andalusian Dog, a short movie that deals with the unconscious mind using dreamlike irrational imagery. Now, while I think that An Andalusian Dog is a garbage film from a storytelling perspective, it's undeniable that the style perfectly aligns with the two core topics of Banana Outrage. Here's how. The mission starts with the Astral Express receiving an invitation to attend a conference at Paperfold University in Penacony. Penacony. But since Welt and Himiko are the ones representing the Express in the conference, Don Hung, March 7th, and the Trailblazer decide to enroll temporarily as students in the meantime. But when the group make it to Penacony, they are met with people from the Bloodhound family investigating a crime, so it is clear that something fishy is going on. And just as the Trailblazer drifts into the dreamscape, a Galaxy Ranger named Rappa shows up and sleeps right next to them to infiltrate the dream. However, everything goes bananas as the two instead find themselves in an unusual location surrounded by monkeys singing and chanting about bananas. Rappa is surprised that she can't communicate with these monkeys, which doesn't seem like a big deal at first glance, but this detail will be important later, so keep it in mind. The Trailblazer almost gets hypnotized by these monkeys until Rappa uses her secret ninja technique Dazzling Palm Righteous Chop to break the MC out of the fiendling sorcery. This is when the two exchange names. Rappa gives the Trailblazer the title of Baseball Bat Ninja, after which they part ways. We then briefly get to see some of Rappa's backstory with her sensei, Kusha, and there is a cool Soul Eater moon reference in the background. Afterwards, the Trailblazer reunites with Don Hung and March 7th. March explains that the monkeys we saw is a meme, where meme here refers to cultural units of information and behavior that spread through imitation, similar to the way that genes spread through biological reproduction. We already saw such dream creatures before, like Gallagher's pet Sleepy, which is also called Death and Dormancy. But Sleepy was a pacifist entity that didn't intend any harm. The meme we are dealing with this time, though, is a sinister one, and it is known as the Slumber Nana Monkey. March goes on to explain that the Slumber Nana Monkey trend blew up in Penacony, garnering many fans and even starting its own language, Bananese, along with the Slumber Nana song.
Banana! Banana!
Now, you might be wondering how this correlates with an Andalusian dog, and the answer is simple. You see, an Andalusian dog as a film is basically one of the first shitposts in history. It's a series of nonsensical, abrupt scenes that occur in quick succession one after the other with very little cohesion, and an overall moral message that can be found in the dumpster behind McDonald's. But if you take the time to view it, you will notice that an Andalusian dog manages to hook you until the end by relying on the surprise factor. Okay, look, I am sure there is some guy who wrote a 100-page document on why this is the greatest piece of art in history. Unfortunately, I don't care. This film is straight ass. Yet, something we can learn from it is that one effective way of making people watch till the end when lacking true meaning or value is by knowing how to manipulate people's attention long enough. And that's actually what the vast majority of modern media has devolved into, especially content catered to kids, which really sucks. And since this problem is particularly prevalent on the internet, people's lives have become so oversaturated with random crap to the point where they can endlessly scroll through it and fry their brain with irrelevant, useless, and in many cases often false information. That's where the term mind virus begins to become relevant. Oh, and by the way, the guy who coined or at least popularized the concept of a mind virus is the same guy who extensively discussed memes, Richard Dawkins. Anyway, later during Banana Outrage, Mr. Reca, who is a Memokeeper and a memetic life form himself, explains that the Slumber Nana Monkey is a memetic virus causing corruption in the dreamscape of Penacony through the dissemination of data in it. It alters particles of information picked up by the cognitive module, skewing sensory perceptions of certain objects in those that have been corrupted. On a surface level, though, the virus manifests its influence in the form of fashionable trends like a funny monkey mascot or a super catchy song, thereby taking advantage of media such as music and videos to control people. But when you think about it, that's the point. Remember, the Slumber Nana Monkey is a memetic virus, or a mind virus. It operates within the confines of dreams and memories, so it needs to find a way to efficiently spread and infect as many hosts. And what better way is there than by exploiting the collective human curiosity? Demonstrating the aforementioned effects of how these mind viruses cause brain rot in real life is incredibly easy. I reckon most of you are familiar with TikTok brain, a modern term that's especially applicable to young teenagers who have become so used to the rapid input of information in high quantities, making them incapable of focusing on a single task for more than 3 minutes. And the way in which Banana Outrage depicts this phenomenon is genius, or as kids these days like to say, absolute cinema. As the virus spread through the dreamscape, the Slumber Nana Monkey fans created their own language, Bananese, which, if anything, is the equivalent of Zoomer lingo. Skibbity toilet, Elris, for real. Oh my god, bro, I lost neurons just by saying that. They also formed group chats and fan clubs whose core tenets preach the complete abandonment of all thought. Those who join these groups as a cheap form of escapism eventually succumb to the Slumber Nana Monkey virus, which exacerbates their vulnerabilities by eating at their capacity for critical thought, eventually turning them into monkeys. This is extremely symbolic of humans losing that which differentiates them and makes them unique. Their mind, their ability to think logically and rationally. And without those, humans are as good as monkeys, following whoever strangles a sweet banana in front of their face. Alright, let's talk about the man behind these atavistic and cognitive experiments. The man strangling the banana. Genius Society member number 64, Dr. Primitive. When Rappa, Trailblazer, and Don Hung confront the creator of Slumber Nana Monkey Virus, Prof. Nana, they learn that his true identity is Professor Primon, a research ape of the AtaviSearch forest who follow the erudition emanator, Dr. Primitive. Primon uses the analogy of the golden Slumber Nana banana selectively bred by the Intelligentsia Guild to explain Dr. Primitive's philosophy. He basically argues that humans have become so advanced and self-sufficient to the point where their unity has allowed them to forsake evolution and reach a standstill, thus hindering their capacity to grow and realize their ultimate potential. Having the same set of genes means also having the same vulnerabilities, hence why Dr. Primitive believes that humans have undergone a flawed banana enlightenment and must be returned to their embryonic potential, giving them a fresh chance to adapt and develop differently. Primon, using the term embryonic potential while describing Dr. Primitive's atavistic experiments, is very interesting because atavism, in its most comprehensive sense, refers to the reappearance of a trait or a characteristic in an organism that was present in a distant ancestor but had been absent in intervening generations. Atavism is seen as evidence for evolution and can be observed during the development of early human embryos, which have tails, even though humans themselves don't have tails. Think of it like a biological throwback to a previous version of something. When a trait or behavior reappears that hasn't been seen in a long time. Hoyoverse uses atavism in Genshin Impact with characters such as Sucrose and Kachina. After all, the concept is explicitly mentioned in Kachina's 4th character story to describe her ears and tail, hence why I found Dr. Primitive's experiments on it so intriguing, especially considering that he is an emanator of erudition. This guy is incredibly powerful. As a matter of fact, Dr. Primitive's whole philosophy reminds me a bit of certain ancient dragons like Apap and Waxaklahun Ubakan, who also pursued evolution. And then there is the fact that the third heart of the primordial sea, Neuvillette, was born in the image of man. Look, now is not the time to discuss this topic, so I won't labor it further, but there is definitely something suspicious going on, so keep it in mind for the future. Rappa, of course, has witnessed firsthand the sheer extent of suffering and chaos brought about by the experiments of Dr. Primitive, whom she calls the evil ninja Osaru, who deceives young ninja disciples, causing them to sway from their ninja path. She talks about how in her hunt of the evil ninja Osaru, she visited the civilizations he destroyed and found in all of them a disturbing common observation. Not a single person could speak. By returning the people to their primitive state, the evil ninja Osaru had stripped them of their identities and sense of self, reducing them to nothing more than monkeys. Just monkeys. This was an excellent callback to when Rappa tried to converse with the monkeys at the moment of Slumber Nana with the Trailblazer from the start of the mission, but found that they all couldn't communicate. The reason this subject matter resonates with Rappa so much, along with why she is hunting down Dr. Primitive to begin with, is because her sensei, Master Kusha, was another one of the evil ninja Osaru's followers from the AtaviSearch forest, and she herself was a failed experimental subject. You see, Master Kusha and his colleague Ape22 acquired a baby whom they labeled AKA3, and optimized her with the highest quality genes from 32 primate civilizations for the sake of furthering Dr. Primitive's atavistic experiment. Unlike Ape22, Master Kusha was quite close to AKA3. He would often spend time with her and even share his old manga collection, Cosmic Ninja Inscriptions, to help keep her entertained. Over time, Master Kusha began to feel guilt for what he was doing to the little girl. He suggested implanting a virus in her mind through mimetic etching in order to improve AKA3's mental resilience and allow her to survive further experimentation. Master Kusha used the Cosmic Ninja Inscription manga as a basis for Rappa's mimetic virus, which is how she became obsessed with ninjas. Kusha later colluded with the Galaxy Rangers, divulging to them the location of the facility, and murdered Ape22 so that Rappa could escape, telling her to never falter on her path of the ninja. In the meantime, Galaxy Ranger Boothill was working with March 7th and Robin to try and quell the spread of the Slumber Nana Monkey's influence throughout Dreamflux Reef, which is crucial since it is the primordial memory zone of Mikhail's dream, making it the true form of the dreamscape. Therefore, if Professor Primon overran it, the virus would infect all of Penacani. To do so, Boothill and March infiltrate the Slumber Nana Association, where they are offered to see the Slumber Nana Monkey. To protect March, Boothill decides to do it, which is when he is transported to the Slumber Nana Theophany. The Slumber Nana Monkey virus takes advantage of Boothill's desire to return to the past and begins to strip away all of his senses. All the color, all the sound, and all the memories that make him who he is until the man regresses to his childhood self before he ever learned to use a gun to kill people. Alright, let's talk about this scene, it's actually super important. Professor Primon orders Boothill to shoot March 7th to demonstrate his regression, proving that after returning to his younger self, Boothill is no longer capable of putting a bullet in someone's head. All people are influenced by circumstances and choices that they have to make throughout their lives, which can affect how they perceive the world. And if you look from an outside perspective at a man making two different decisions at the same point in his life, each leading him down two very different paths, by the end of each path, you might notice that what was once this man has become two completely distinct, almost unrecognizable people. However, to Primon's surprise, the reason Boothill didn't pull the trigger on March wasn't because his younger self had never learned to kill yet. No, the actual reason is much simpler. You see, regardless of what path they walk on or at which point of their lives they are, there is a certain nature to what makes every person who they are, and that core nature is unchanging. But don't misinterpret what I'm saying as people being either born good or evil. Good and evil are outcomes of actions, and actions can be controlled through logical behavior. In this case, young Boothill, despite being vastly different from his adult self, still had the essence of who the man named Boothill really is, allowing him to make the right decision at that moment. As for what his essence is, well,
be it a wanted criminal with the blood of many on their hands, or a young cowboy who's never fired a gun. Both share a common instinct in every sense of the word. And that's to put a bullet in anything evil. Muddle fudger. That's another good thing about dying. Whatever your excuses and ideas are, I ain't gotta waste time listening to them.
Oh, am I late?
You referring to what's finished or what's only just beginning?
The one that's about to begin? Oh, right. I should go get help. You need to get your head checked, like, right now.
Get my head checked? What in forking hell are...
Honestly, March and Boothill are a legendary combo. I would pay for a 12-episode anime of their adventures together, that would be funny. Sadly though, not everyone has Boothill's mental resilience, and many of Professor Primon's victims were transformed into monkeys. Here's what's interesting though. Prof. Nana Primon used Penacani's highest academic institution as his base of operations. In other words, Paperfold University was the breeding ground for the Slumber Nana Monkey virus, and yeah, it's abundantly clear that the developers are making a profound statement with this analogy. Universities are supposed to be the hub of all knowledge, where information is constantly discovered, exchanged, and taught. So corrupting such institutions of knowledge can easily damage the entire society. Professor Primon himself even admitted that inside the sweet dream of the harmony, fashionable trends are equivalent to strength. Those who control them can control everyone. With that being said, the Memokeeper Reca had other plans for how this story ends. Reca knew that Rappa's immunity to Prof. Nana Primon's virus was thanks to her own mimetic virus, which acts as a sort of antidote, or as she puts it, snake poison fighting against scorpion poison. So, with the help of the Trailblazer, Reca extracted Rappa's memetic ninja virus to use it on the people of the Dreamscape in limited quantity. Not enough to infect them with the Cosmic Ninja Inscription virus, but enough to snap them out of the Slumber Nana Monkey virus. The second part of Mr. Reca's script involves Robin and Boothill, who with the help of Mika set up a music show from the outside at Dreamflux Reef, where Robin can use her tuning to harmonize all the different songs of the people and break them free from the mind virus. At the same time, Rappa, Dan Hung, and the Trailblazer confront Prof. Nana Primon at the moment of Slumber Nana, where he insults Rappa along with the outdated manga series she built her entire identity on, stating that it could never replace the fashionable trends of the modern times. Expanding upon what we saw him do when he tried to erase Boothill's identity, Primon talks about how those who place emphasis on personality and individuality will pass on their genes while failing to contribute to the cause of their kind, attaining the ultimate evolutionary potential of the species. Rappa quickly shuts him down, telling Primon that he is a puppet of the evil ninja Osaru and that corrupt people like them will make all kinds of excuses to try and justify their crimes against others. Rappa always had faith in her path of the ninja, and thus believes that all young ninja disciples must be given the freedom to follow their own ninja way. Thus, the final battle begins, and with the help of Robin's music festival from the outside, Prof. Nana Primon was defeated, but he still managed to escape, of course. This final fight is mainly an analogy for old media fighting against new media. Prof. Nana Primon foolishly dismisses Rappa's manga as being outdated, stating that it could never catch up with how people think and operate today. Yet in the end, the classic old-school manga prevailed against the soulless new age brainrot fashionable trends. And this happens precisely because said manga is a work with a soul. It has an identity thanks to the effort that its creators put into making it. And this soul is apparent in every line of every frame on every page that you flip. Whether it's a generational show with a profound life-changing message, or even music, a poem, a song, these works have meaning, they convey a message, and in many cases have a strong moral lesson that their author wants to teach from their experiences in the world. This is a challenge that, thankfully, cheap clickbait brainrot content can never surmount. It will always lose in a fair fight. The brainrot virus can only win in a vacuum by manipulating people's attention long enough, by distracting them long enough, until it turns them into mindless monkeys who lost that which makes them unique: their creativity, their ability to think. Yeah, anyway, when the Nameless return to Paperfall University and ask Montana about the Slumber Nana monkey, she scoffs and explains how the Cosmic Ninja inscriptions have become the latest trend on the block. Looks like we gotta keep up with the times, man. Which does happen, by the way. Old media can, in many cases, experience resurgence periods, sometimes organically and sometimes manufactured. Shout out to everyone watching Ranma 1/2 Remake this season. However, in this specific case, since it's replacing the Slumber Nana monkey, the Cosmic Ninja Inscription manga is going to get overhyped and overused into oblivion until everyone gets fed up and turns on it. And you know what I am saying is true, because that's precisely what happened with Demon Slayer. I suppose no matter how hard we try, there is no escaping from humanity's tendency for brain rot. Well, that was a really cool Trailblaze mission with lots of cultural commentary from the developers. Furthermore, it makes sense that everything went bananas, since after all, this story is taking place inside a dreamscape. Before I end this video, I still have some final thoughts to add, starting with March 7th. While they were attempting to infiltrate the Slumber Nana Association, we learned that March was the perfect candidate for connecting with the Slumber Nana monkey, as she is extremely talented in not thinking. Now, I know that this is the complete opposite of impressive, but when you look at the bigger picture and put things into perspective, this revelation is both super duper interesting and kinda sad at the same time. And when I say sad, I mean it in an ironically hilarious way, since the implication here is that March doesn't think about much, so she's kinda stupid, but she's aware of that, which means she knows that she's an airhead and just lives with it. Look, March is adorable. The catch though is that we must remember that March's quote-unquote talent is a result of her former identity and memories being sealed by the Aeon Fully of the Remembrance, meaning that there is a whole other side to March 7th that we haven't seen yet. This matters because thanks to the Memokeeper Black Swan, the next stop on the Astral Express's journey is the Greek world of Amphorius, the Eternal Land. And considering the fact that according to Black Swan, Amphorius can only be seen by the lights reflected in the mirrors of the Garden of Recollection, well, I will just say we're in for a very interesting journey soon. Speaking of Memokeepers, at the end of Banana Outrage, Mr. Reca meets up with Rappa to pay her remunerations for helping him shoot such an absolutely fabulous movie. And his remunerations were certainly worth the time for Rappa, since it's information on her hunt's target. Information regarding Dr. Primitive's whereabouts. As I said earlier, Banana Outrage is one of the coolest missions in Honkai Star Rail, and perhaps one of the best stories that Hoyoverse have written depending on how you want to look at it. They delivered a deep and introspective look into the relationship between human essence and the state of modern media Brainrot, which is really surprising when you consider that this is the same company that shortly before Banana Outrage released a 1 hour and 25-second loop of this.
3, 2, 1, fire!
At any rate, we have reached the end of this video. As always, huge thanks to everyone who supports this channel on Patreon, and thank you for watching till here. For now, I've been My Name for Now, and always remember, never abandon your path of the ninja.